be used produce the paper that has been published on a paper. So it has this key component, the image, an object, camera, and a film. Now let's move to another section, which is the types of photographs. There's types of photographs. The types of photographs. Types. So when we are talking about types, there are only two types. One, there is we call it horizontal photograph, and the second one is the aerial photograph. So there are only two. There are horizontal and aerial photograph. Now let's start by looking at what horizontal photograph means. What horizontal photograph means. Now, when we are talking about the horizontal photograph, this is a photograph that has been taken with the camera at the same level with the object. The camera is at the same level with the object. In other words, if this is our ground, and the cameraman is standing here, let's say this is our man with a camera, the object will be horizontally placed, meaning it is the same level with the photograph man and then or a woman, and then it will be projected towards the object. That is horizontal. But horizontal photograph has also levels. It has levels of capture. Number one, it has what we call the ground close-up. Where you only focus on one object. Have you ever seen a photograph whereby the image that is focused on, that is the one that is shown lightly, but the ones that are on the ground are dim, or the blurred, they are not clear. Meaning the cameraman or the camera person is interested in only that object. Then the second one is what we call the ground general view. That is a photograph that is intended to capture everything. For example, if you are dealing with a forest and you want all people in a rally or classwork, or even want to capture friends around without focusing on one person, that's the general view. All of them will be shown in the picture without negating anybody. Then it also has another level, which is the ground obliques. Now this is an interesting one. When a cameraman stands, we've already defined that when you're dealing with the horizontal photographs, we've said that the camera person is at the same level with the object. Now, the object that is focused on still lies on the ground. Let's say if this is a tower or a tall building, but the image you want to capture is at the highest level, and you are here. So there's an angle you'll be taking a photograph. That angle brings it to another level. The other one we said it's horizontal. It is horizontal, but still at the same level with the object. The camera is at the same level with the object. But when we are dealing with obliques, there is some angle involved. You see, there's an arc here going to an inclined angle, capturing an object on a tall tower. So this one gives it an angle. So this angle is what makes it to be called the oblique photographs. So the other term that is normally used is ground oblique, because the cameraman still is at the same level with the object, but the object might be higher, or maybe the cameraman might be on top of this building, and he or she is focusing on an object that is down here. So it will still create an angle, and that is the ground oblique. So it means that when an object is taken, when a photo of an object is taken with an oblique type of a photograph, it means that the camera is slightly tilted, or it is slanting, or it has some angle that is involved. Now, that is the ground photograph. That is the ground photograph. The ground photograph. Now, let's go to the second part, which is the aerial photograph. The aerial photograph. Now, from the word aerial, it means there's some height involved, and the camera person is, we can say, is on air. Maybe these cameras and these photos are normally taken when there is a ground survey and somebody wants to take a clear view of what is happening on the ground. So when they are taking these photos, they are normally involved, or they are normally carried by the aircrafts, the air balloons, or sometimes the satellites that have been mounted high to capture the image of the universe or the earth. So it is sometimes for us to wonder how these images are captured. So when you are capturing the images and we are above the ground, that's what we call the aerial photographs. Now, aerial photographs is also divided into two. It is divided into two, and one division of the aerial photograph, the number one division is the vertical aerial photograph. The vertical aerial photograph. And the second one is the oblique aerial photograph. When we are talking about vertical aerial photographs, that means the camera is directly above the ground. So for example, if you want to talk about an aeroplane, let's say this is an aeroplane. This is our aeroplane. So let's say it is flying. It is flying above the ground. This is the ground. So if the camera, let's assume this is our working aeroplane, don't worry about it, and then you are focusing on an object down here, that is vertical. The image that is taken directly at a 90-degree angle is what we call the vertical photograph. So the image that we are focusing down here has been taken vertically. It has been taken vertically. Then the second one, we've talked of oblique. And from the word oblique, when you are discussing the ground photograph, the first type is that there is some angle that is involved when carrying out the aerial photograph. So this angle can look like this. When a camera is here, it can be tilted maybe towards this direction. So when it captures an object that is here, there is an angle between the camera and the straight line that goes to the object that the person or the company, the institution is interested in. So with this angle, this is what makes it to be the oblique aerial photograph. The oblique aerial photograph. So differentiate the two. There is horizontal and aerial photograph. Horizontal, the object is at the same level with the photographer, and the second one is aerial photograph. The photographer is above the ground, and he or she captures an object vertically or in oblique angle. So that's how it works. So it is for us to identify how this photo was taken, and it's very, very, again, easier to identify how these photos have been taken. So take note of that. Now, this leads us to another section, which is identifying the parts of a photograph. Photograph has parts. It has 9 parts, and this is how the parts are divided. This is how the parts are divided. If this, you assume that our photograph has already been captured and published on a piece of paper, and published on a piece of paper. So you see these lines symbolizes the parts of a photograph. So if you count these boxes, it is 3 times 3, which is 9. So when we are talking about on the types of the photographs, when we are facing towards the photographs, when you are facing towards the photographs, this one becomes left, this one becomes right, and this one becomes middle. Same here is left, middle, and right. And the last one is left, sorry, middle, and right. So all these are parts of a photo. Now, this is what differentiates it. On top of the first line is what we call the background. That is the background. So we'll call this one is left background. Left background. So when you want to identify an object here that has been captured here, you'll talk of check on your left background. So the first part is left background. This one is middle background, and this one is right background. That is first part. Then the second part, the second line, which is the middle. So here is the left middle, and then here remains the middle ground, and then this one is the right middle. That one is the right middle. Then the last part is this one is what we call the foreground. This one is the foreground. So this one is the left foreground, the middle foreground, and the right foreground. So learners, you can really identify how a photograph has been divided, and as you can see here shown on the board is that it has 9 parts, and these 9 parts are divided into sections. So we have the left background, the middle background, and the right background. Then left, middle, and right middle. Then the last one is left foreground, middle foreground, and the right foreground. That's how a photograph is divided. And that when you identify an object down, maybe here if you are told to identify an object on a drawing or a picture that has been presented, the first thing you do is that you divide this photo into 9 parts. After dividing into 9 parts, that's when you now give it the location at which that object is located. And that's why we say if it is located here, you'll say that an object has been found within the middle part, or the right. If it is here, you say the right background. Or if it is down here, you can say it is the right foreground. So we have the middle, we have the background, we have the middle, and we have the foreground. So all those 3. So again, it is subdivided into now left, right. Is either left, right, or middle. So learners, that is how a photograph is divided. Again, looking at how the photograph has been divided, we now have to look at how it is used. How as photographs used. So let's go to another section, which is the uses of photograph. Uses of photograph. Now, as we are going step by step, you realize that when you want to excel in your early or in your later, let's say in your later career, or the media, or you want to be a photographer, or you want to even be a professional journalist, these are the parts that you should identify when you are talking about a photograph. You must know how to divide it. You must know at which angle am I taking this photo and for which purpose. So that's why when we are coming to the uses and the advantages of the photographs, we now know that photographs are very important, and you've seen it has even been used in terms of solving some crime issues, the crime scene. And that's why it's normally sealed for the photographs to be taken and to know actually what happened to the actual ground. And that's why when you are beginning with this program, talking about the map, picture, and an image or a plan, we talked about the actual image. A picture is the representation of the actual image. So whatever happens, the one that has been captured is the one that is presented. So number one use, the uses of a photograph. So number one uses of a photograph. So the number one use of a photograph is it is used in learning geography. Now we are learning geography. And when you're learning geography, geography deals with earth, is the earth science. So when you're dealing with the groundwork, the forest, when you're dealing with the urban center, the political geography, geographical boundaries, when you're talking about sea, the oceanography, the hydrology, when you're talking of the ionosphere or even the internal parts of the earth, we capture these things in pictures whenever necessary. So when you're using this, we use the cameras to actually give us the actual presentation of an object that is found on the ground. And that's why we say you can identify whether it is in the middle, it's the foreground, it's in the left, it is in the four part left foreground. So you can easily identify that. So we use it in learning geography to give us the actual features that you are studying with. Photographs are also used to show vegetation and the human activities. Vegetation and human activities. You've seen the tea in Kericho, the sugarcane in the Western Belt region, the coffee in central Kenya. We've also seen some parts in the arid areas, the rainy areas, the rainy forest. So all this shows the activity and what is there, the vegetation that is there. So let's look at the other use. The other use, the aerial photograph is used to give the aerial photographs that has been used to give the vital information about the land that we live in. We've identified that some problems, or even if we want to identify some features, aerial photographs have been taken. You've even seen in the developed states where even if a crime has been done and those who have done the crimes are running away, the aircrafts have been used in chasing these people and to identify where they are hiding. So it has been good, and it shows us what happens. Even in climate change, when the cameras are projected down, we are able to tell that the forest is increasing or the forest area is reducing. So all these are captured through the camera. Another one that shows the land forming process. For example, where a volcanicity is happening or it's occurring, and we've said it's the eruption of the hot magma that have been heated in the middle part of the earth, and that's what you call the mantle. That's where the molten rocks are found. So when they are erupting out, you as a photographer, you cannot take it directly, but somebody has to take it far away from the ground and then draw it closer for people to see what is happening. So this is done high above, and that's why you say when a photograph is taken high above the ground, that is an aerial photograph. So it depends with the angle, either oblique or vertical. So you can tell what is happening. Now that you've known the uses of the photographs, the next segment is the limitation of the photographs. Everything has an advantage and a disadvantage. So the number one disadvantage is that the colored photographs are generally expensive. So when you're taking the colored photographs, generally, if you don't have money and you want to produce a good quality work, then it means you must be able to spend more. So when you want to spend more, then you have to have money. So it's normally expensive. And when another disadvantage is that when you are talking about the black and white photos, sometimes they don't show us the images clearly. Therefore, we are not able to tell whether this is what or what has happened. So it's poor, and again, it doesn't show some features clearly. The other one is the vertical photographs are difficult to interpret. without special instruments. So the instruments that are involved in carrying out the aerial photographs. So when this is taken, generally some instrumentations have to be employed within the ground and high above in order to capture the photographs. The other one is it is difficult to interpret where the photographs are a bit blurred, where they're not clear. So sometimes it's very difficult, especially the ones that have been taken on, when moving or at a high speed or when not intended. And it's a missing part that is needed to solve a certain issue. So sometimes it is very difficult to tell. Now that we are through with the definition, the types, the uses, and the parts of the photographs, let's head to the interpretation of photographs. How are photographs interpreted? Now that you've taken photographs, somebody can ask you, so what? Now, photographs have a very important role that they play in terms of interpretation. So when you want to interpret our photographs, then the following must be involved. It means when interpreting the photographs, you want to explain the meaning of the objects that have been captured, the meaning and the uses of the objects that have been captured. So when we are using this, therefore, each photograph that is taken, be it socially, be it political, it must show some interpretation that we want to do. Now, number one way of interpreting a photo is that it must have a title. Every photo that is given must have a title. Even if you take a photo right now, you can't just post it, but you just say we are enjoying with friends, we are socially enjoying with friends, or we are eating, we are taking lunch, or we are surveying the land. So we must have the interpretations of what is given. So there must be a theme, or there must be a title under which that photograph has been taken. So when you're talking about the title, that it should show the shadows, the short or the longest moon. Actually, photos can be sometimes been divided at which the time of the photo or the time at which the photo was taken. So normally it is the morning, is in the afternoon or noon when the sun is directly above us, or in the evening. So it can only be taken in those three conditions: in the evening, in the morning, and at noon. So these are the best time when the photos are taken. You are able to tell at what time. You are able to estimate that at this time, this photograph was taken. Leave alone the ones that you normally take at night because we improvise with the lights. But in the evening, at noon, and in the morning, we can easily interpret what has happened. So when you are talking about that, we estimate time using those. So we can estimate by looking at the morning, the noon hour, and the evening. And this one, it mainly involves the shadow. So your shadow can always tell you where and at what time this event occurred. So we are able to say, at this time, this is what happened. Then the second one is, it can be used to, I've said number one, it determines the title. Once you've looked at the picture, you'll say, this was a restaurant, this was a forest region, this was a groundwork, this was a political gathering, or this was afforestation or deforestation. It gives you the title. Immediately you see the picture. Then number two, we've said, it helps you in estimation, in the estimating of time. Can be morning, can be noon, it can be the evening, and you can basically look at the shadow in which these objects, the shadows of the objects, the angle at which they are tilting. When it is directly above you, you know that if it is noon, you'll say it was around 12 p.m. It was around 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. Then if the shadow is on the left, depending on the position of the sun, then you can tell it was in the morning or it was in the evening. depending on the area, because we are driven with three things. We have the equator, the tropical of Cancer, and the tropical of Capricorn. So this what it entails. Again, photographs are used in the interpretation of the season. The interpretation of the season. When you're talking about the season, it covers a broad area of the climatic categorization of the regions. So when you're talking about, for example, when a photograph has been taken when there's a rainy season, or the ground, the vegetation are green, very green, will say that this area has received enough rainfall, and therefore it will tell us that this is an area that receives enough rainfall. The other one is it shows the dry vegetation, the types of vegetation. Even when people are spotted harvesting maize from the ground, it will tell us the season of harvesting. There is not enough rain. When you see people planting, it will automatically tell you that there is enough rain, people are planting. The other one is the season. We are still talking of the season, estimating of the season. If you see people wearing heavy clothes, this will tell you that the heavy clothes that have been worn, symbolizes that the area in which the photograph has been taken is cold. When you see people walking with their chest open, people walking with light clothes, tells you that there's enough heat that the environment of that region experiences. Then we can also talk of high temperature and low temperature. I've said depending on the cloth, the vegetation, because we know very well that tea performs well where there is enough rainfall and there is some level of coldness. So that will tell you that this region receives enough rainfall. If you see vegetation like shrubs, the cactus, it tells you that this area is a semi-arid condition. Then you see a place that there is no vegetation at all. You only see sand and rock. It tells you that this is an area that experiences high temperature, and this area is a dry area. The other one is the photographs are used in determining the compass direction, and I've told you that by the estimation of the shadow, your shadow can tell whether it was east, it was west. So it tells us how it is. However, sometimes you can even use the flagpoles that can tell us, depending on their shadow, it can tell us that the sun is shifting this from this point A to point B, from point C to point D, depending on that. And therefore, the shadow, as it goes, it keeps on tilting until the shadow becomes longer. It becomes longer due to the angle at which the sun is projecting the light. The other one is it can also show us the morning hours, as I told you before, and the morning hours can tell us the direction of the area. The other interpretation that a photographs can be used is for the interpretation of the relief features. The mountain, the valleys, the fault. So when you're talking of the relief features, this is a natural phenomenon that occurs at any time. So like if you are shown a rift valley, in a rift valley, the only thing that will ring us is that there was a kind of a process that occurred in the rift valley, and that is faulting. There was faulting. There was a formation of the weak lines, the fault lines, that led to the formation of the rift valley. You see that? So in interpretation of the relief features, it can tell you that even on the mountain, when you take a mountain and then it is photographed, the mountain is always divided into two. There's the windward side and the relief side. So this relief side received enough rainfall while the windward side is dry. So those are the relief features that can be used to interpret. It can also be used to interpret the flat land, the swamps, the oxbow lakes, the icebergs. We can also see the lakes, the rivers, and all this tells us about the relief features. For example, when you get an oxbow lake, when an oxbow lake is shown to you, what happens to you is that it will immediately show you that the ground at which the swamp was taken is flat. That's where an oxbow lake can be formed. It is formed where the ground is flat and slightly forms a bow that holds the water around. If you see the lines of the delta lines, for example, when you are talking about the distributary, see the distributary merging up and emptying their water into the lake or the sea or the ocean. It tells you that this is the lowest ground, because the lowest ground is always at the sea level. Another one is we've talked of the landscape. It can also show us the landscape. This is an island area. This is a lowland area. This is a hilly area, rugged area. All these can be used to interpret the kind of environment that is there. Then, for example, when we are talking about the mountainous areas and the slopes and the highland area, when you see waterfalls, when you see rapids, these are small distances of water. Then when you also see the interlocking spars within the land, those ones shows you that this is an island area, and therefore there's an activity that is happening. And you can remember when we are talking about weathering process, it was that kind of environment that gave us the interpretation of what is happening. When the granules are split from the top of the mountain and then they roll down. When they roll down, this is what happens. So it shows us that it's a highland or it's a flat area. Then also drainage, it can also be used to interpret the drainage. For example, the rapid, when a river is still at the youthful stage, because it's a process of formation of the drainage system. When you're talking about the river, the drainage system, we normally follow up some kind of growth from the lowest part to maturity. So when it's still at the youthful stage, we experience things like rapid, the waterfalls, the interlocking spars. Then when it's at the middle, we now start to see the meanders and the oxbow formation, because the land has already been formed. And then we have a lower stage, which is the formation of delta. That's when it's emptying its water into the sea, the river, into the sea, the lake, or the ocean. This formation of deltas, the meanders, this floodplain where the water is emptied. Then vegetation, again, when you're talking about the vegetation, if it is natural, when you want to interpret the kind of vegetation that is found, if it is natural, then you'll see the indigenous species of the tree. The indigenous species of the tree or vegetation. You'll also see the dense undergrowth. This dense undergrowth, the ones that have not been interfered with. Then there's also different species of tree. It's not only one. If you see a particular forest possessing one kind of a tree, then that means that is not an indigenous species of tree or indigenous forest. That is a forest that has been compromised by man. Another one is when the trees are not on the same height, they're jungled up, things are mixed up, that's a natural forest. When we are talking about the planted one, we say there's only one species, or we call them the exotic species. They are in rows, they are little undergrowth because men are trying to make them grow to serve a particular purpose. For example, when we're interested in getting the electricity poles, then we'll plant one type of trees and we make sure they grow very fast, as fast as possible. Therefore, the undergrowth trees are normally not tolerated. When they have, sometimes when they have little growth, undergrowth, they have little undergrowth, I've said that. a same species, a same height. You see that. Then when you're talking about the tropical rainforest, when you're talking about the rainforest, there's trees, there's broad leaves, there's an umbrella shape. We normally call it the canopy. When the canopy is formed, there's little underground because they inhibit the rays of sunlight from accessing the downer part of the forest, and therefore there's scanty growth downer because it forms that canopy. Even some areas, you might find out that it's very dark. The sun is there on top, but it has been blocked, so it's very dark underneath, and that's another interpretation. When we're talking about marshes, you'll talk about swamp. Whenever you see a swamp, you interpret that this has been formed as a result of marshes. Then we also have savanna grassland. When you see savanna grassland, you'll only see the acacia trees and the grass alone. That area has been classified as, in terms of the vegetation cover, classified on Earth. It will tell you that this is a savanna grassland. This is a savanna grassland. Then we also have, when you're talking about desert, you see the thorny leaves of trees, the baobab, the acacia again, and the scrubland, the covered, even the shrubs. So, and about the climate, whenever you see the sugar cane, it tells you the kind of the climate. We have the sisal. You see it excels in a semi-arid condition. The shrubs and the bush, the land vegetation, the dense forest, and the light cloths tells you that this is an area that has high temperature. Then the cold temperature, you see areas covered with tea, coffee, wheat, the dairy farming. All these areas symbolizes that these areas are cold in nature. Then when you see soils, for example, you want to interpret soils. You want to interpret, for example, the acidic and volcanic soils. There are only two crops that excel well in a volcanic soil. So these are the coffee and the tea. For example, in the central Kenya, we said that the soil that possesses what we call the silica, and the ones that are red in color as a result of the iron 3 oxide. Now the iron 3 oxide, you remember when we are talking about that, the rock formation. So with that element, whenever it mixes with the rain, it forms the acidic soils because of the high level of silica. And we said when a volcanic eruption occurs, there are two components that comes out. We call it sile, the silica and the aluminum. So when it mixes with water and other component, it forms the acidic soils. So these acidic soils can only help in the growth of coffee and tea. Then clay soils, for example, if you go to areas of the Kano Plain, where a higher irrigation scheme, you'll only see the black soil. So these are soils that have been washed away from the upper part and then settled down on a flat area. So as a result of it, it forms the clay soil because they have finer granules which can hold water, and you see rice does as well where there is enough water. So that's a clay soil. Again is the black cotton soil. You can only see, when you see cotton and rice, it tells you that the type of soil that is here is the clay soil or the black cotton soil that is there because cotton is growing there well, and the rice. Then when you're talking about loamy soils, the only crops that does well in loamy soils are the horticultural crops. So whenever you see the flowers, you see the vegetables that do well, it talks about the loamy soil. Now, so as we are approaching to the end of the photograph's work, is that whenever you want to draw, whenever you want to sketch a diagram from a photograph, always make sure that you observe the parts. Now, the reason why you observe the parts is that we want to give the photographs an information, a piece of information that can help even those people who want to interpret an event or what happened at that time. So it's always important for us to know what it means, what it entails, and what we want to do with that photograph. So we'll always do that. Now, learners, as we have been moving on, there is this book that has really been helpful to so many students, and anytime you feel like you want to win this book, then you have to participate actively. An active student is a student that is eager, is a student that is eager or to make a life look good in future. So if you're like, or if you want to be interested in geography, and I've said geography cuts across, it cuts across environment, it cuts across the political boundary, it cuts across those who want to do the oceanography, those who want to do earth science. This is the best book for you. So you can always win it, so long as you participate, so long as you make efforts to do. So always make sure that you are good. So this is a book from the Achievers Geography, the KCSE revision. It has quick notes and the models of examination papers. It is from the EAEP, written by Simon Degwa. It's a good book and it will assist you a lot. So make sure you participate actively for you to win this book. Now, learners have seen the questions that have been asked. The question that have been asked. Somebody is asking, morning teacher, Douglas from Muranga in school at Gishai in secondary horizontal photography, also known as, is asking, my question is, horizontal photography is also known as the ground photography. Now we have the ground photography. So in the ground photography, it is classified into two. There is horizontal, there is horizontal, and there's what you call the oblique pictures that have been taken. But all of them lies at the same level. Remember, the photographer and the object is at the same ground. The other question is, hi teacher, I'm Flavian from Nyarach. What are the uses of the camera in geography? I've stated that if you are very keen, you've seen it's used to interpretation of features and all that. Somebody is also asking to explain the state and the type of photographs. The type of the photograph, you've said there are only two types. There is the ground photograph and the aerial photograph. Under ground photograph, there is horizontal, then there is oblique, and under the aerial photograph, we've talked of the vertical and the oblique photographs. And so there are so many questions, but whenever you start something, there must be an end to it. So this has been a very interesting lesson for all of you. So you can always review this, you can always access this information whenever you want, so long as you are online, for you to thrive well in excelling in exam. So Stephen Okuta, as always, I'll be ready to assist you, ready to work with you throughout your journey. And for today, I can only say, take care of yourself. We are in the second wave and people are dying. Please, we need you in the future to inherit the kind of good work that we've been doing. So thank you so much. Have a lively day. Have a lovely day, and may God bless you. Thank you.